Very, very good morning to all of you, my friends. Welcome back. I hope you guys have enjoyed your Diwali. So now let's get back to studies. I hope you guys have solved the questions of the chapters what I have discussed in previous few sessions. So now let's start with the next part of the syllabus wherein we'll be discussing few methods of costing. So without wasting time, let's start with this chapter, process costing. From examination point of view, in every attempt, you will find a question on process costing. So guys, do pay attention. Whatever the queries you have, you guys can post your queries over the portal or over a Zoom, whatever convenient for you. So let's start with this chapter, process costing. So this process costing is a method of costing used by those companies wherein their input or raw material has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. I repeat again, guys, this process costing is a method of costing used by those companies or manufacturing organization wherein their raw material or input has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. So it's a method of costing used by those companies It's a method of costing used by those companies wherein the raw material or we can say inputs. It's a method of costing used by those companies wherein the raw material or inputs has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final. So I repeat again, it's a method of costing used by those companies wherein the raw material or inputs has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. So how this mechanism works, so let's say these are my inputs. Now these inputs are introduced or transferred. You can say the better word is transferred to process first. Now, once the process first gets over, the output of process first is transferred to process second. The output of process first will be transferred to process second. Now, once the process second gets over, let's say there is one more process. So output of process second will be transferred to process third. Assuming there are only three processes, so the output of process third will be what? My final product. So here we can see that the inputs are introduced. The inputs are introduced in process first. After completion of process first, the output of process first is transferred to process second. Once the process second gets over, the output of process second is transferred to process third. And assuming there are only three processes, the output of third process will be what? My final product. So I repeat again, this process costing is a method of costing used by those companies wherein the raw material has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. I request you guys to please copy. And further, I repeat again, the concept part, I want you guys to copy during the session only. For solutions or for anything, you guys can take screenshot. But yes, specifically for the concepts, I request you guys to please copy. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'll be taking Hardik. Don't worry. I'll be taking one session on activity-based costing. We'll be discussing few advanced problem. You guys will be updated soon. Don't worry. Now, let's discuss this mechanism with the help of a practical example also. So let's say I'm the manufacturer of potato chips from potatoes. I do manufacture potato chips from potatoes. So my input is what? My input is what? Potatoes. My input is what? My potatoes. I procure these potatoes directly from farm and they are transported from farm to my factory. So once these potatoes are received, they are introduced in process first. Let's say process first is what? Sorting, grading, and cleaning. Let's say I'm the manufacturer of potato chips from potatoes. So my inputs are what? Potatoes, and I procure these potatoes directly from farm, and from farm they are transported to my factory. So once I receive these potatoes, they are introduced in process first, wherein the sorting, grading, and cleaning is done. Now, once this process gets over, the output of this process is transferred to next process, wherein I convert these potatoes, that is the cleaned or graded, I convert these clean potatoes into potato chips. Conversion of into. Now, once the potato chips are ready, it is transferred to the next process. Let's say process third, wherein I do add flavors and preservatives. So let's say adding flavors and preservatives. Again, once after adding the flavors and preservatives, let's say my final chips are ready and they are transferred to next process, wherein they are packed in various packets. So we can say packing and finishing. So once the packing and finishing is done, my final product is ready, or we can say my final output is ready. So it is to be transferred to finished goods. So what we can say that from converting potato into potato chips, various processes are involved. That is sorting and grading and cleaning, conversion of potato into potato chips, thereafter adding flavors and preservatives, and last is packing and finishing. So there are various processes involved in manufacturing potato chips from potato. So herein will be using process costing. It's a very basic example. I'm not using any technical products or anything like that. Just a very basic example I have used. So herein what we can see is that the raw material that is inputs, that is my potatoes, are passing through two or more than two products before being converted into final product, that is my potato chips. Now, very important, guys. Since each process is unique and separate set of costs are incurred for every process. So therefore, what we will do is, for every process, we will prepare a separate process account to record the costs that are pertaining to that process. I'm writing this for your reference. Since each process is separate and unique, or we can say unique, and separate set of costs are incurred in every process. Therefore, separate process account is to be prepared. Therefore, separate process account is to be prepared for every process to record the cost pertaining to that process. So I repeat again, since each process is unique and separate set of costs are incurred in every process, therefore separate process account is to be prepared for every process to record the cost pertaining to that process. So herein, process first account will prepare, process second account will prepare, process third account will prepare, and process fourth account will prepare to record the cost pertaining to every process. If you guys have any doubts or queries relating to this part, you guys can please post. Waiting for your queries. In the meanwhile, I request you guys to please copy this explanation. Good morning, Mr. Sahu. It is packing and finishing, Bhavna. Manvi, there can be 7 to 8 process also in a particular industry. So there can be any process. So I repeat again, this method of costing is applied when there are 2 or more than 2 processes involved. 2 भी हो सकता है, 3 भी हो सकता है, 4 भी हो सकता है, 5 भी हो सकता है, even 10 or more than 10 processes also. So my point is very simple, that सेपरेट प्रोसेस अकाउंट इज टू बी प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर एवरी प्रोसेस. जितने प्रोसेस हैं उतने आपको प्रोसेस अकाउंट बनाने पड़ेंगे. Kasak, we have started with process costing. It's a method of costing used by those companies wherein the raw material has to pass through 2 or more than 2 processes before being converted into final product. Since each process is unique, therefore a separate process account is to be prepared for every process. Anyone else having any doubts or queries? Now the point is how to prepare process account. It's very simple. How to prepare process account. Let's say we are preparing process first account. So the first column will be particulars, amount, particulars, sorry, unit and amount, particulars, units and amount. So this is the basic format, debit and credit. So in this, we will first write the inputs or material, the quantity of material introduced. Let's say I have made an input of 10,000 kgs. So we'll write the units. Along with this, we will write the cost of the material. Thereafter, we'll record all the cost of conversion, be it labor, be it direct expenses, be it overheads. Whatever it is, the information will be given in the question clearly. Now, if there is any normal loss, we'll record the normal loss here. Let's say 10% units are scrapped. So we'll record the normal loss here and the amount realized on sale of normal loss. We'll write abnormal loss. If any extra loss is there over and above normal loss, we'll write abnormal loss. We'll write the value of abnormal loss. If abnormal gain is there, we'll write abnormal gain separately here. The number of units of abnormal gain and the amount, the value thereof. And after all this, we'll write the final output that is transferred to process second. As of now, ignore these parts. I'll be discussing these 3 parts separately. What is normal loss? What is abnormal loss? So in short, this much is the material, this much is the conversion cost, and this much is the output what we are getting. So this is the basic format of a particular process account. Now, very important, after preparing process first account, we'll prepare process second account. Again, in the same way, that is particulars, units, amount. Particulars, units, and amount. Now, very important, the output of process first is transferred to process second. So for process second, the input will be what? The input will be the input that is received from process first. So we'll write to process first. And thereafter, whatever the conversion cost, be it labor, overheads, if any abnormal gain is there, abnormal gain. If any normal loss is there, in the similar way, normal loss. If any abnormal loss is there, we'll write abnormal loss. And let's say there are only two processes involved. So by finished stock account. So this is the very basic format of process account, wherein very simple, we'll record all the costs and we'll write the output on the credit side. I'll be discussing abnormal loss, abnormal gain separately. So don't worry, guys. So this is how the process account is to be prepared. If you guys have any doubts, you guys can please post your query. So this is all what we discussed till now, wherein what's the meaning of process costing, how this mechanism works, the basic format of process account. You guys can refer the PPT, what I'm sharing, what I have shared. So you guys can please check. And those who want to copy this part can write it for your reference. Up to you. No, this will not be the balancing figure, my dear. If any direct expenses are given, then we'll write direct expenses also. Whatever the costs that are given relating to a particular process will be recorded in the process account. Anyone else with any doubts or queries? Okay, Ankit. Will give you time to copy. I'm sorry. Yes, if any additional material is there, then we'll write material also. If any additional material is there, then we'll write additional material also, my dear. In short, yaar, keep the things very simple. जो भी cost लिखा है relating to a particular process, be it material, labor, overheads, depreciation, indirect material, indirect labor, by whatever name called, establishment expenses, whatever the expenses that are given relating to a particular process, we have to record in process account. ऐसा नहीं है कि कुछ भी expenses ignore करना है. जो भी expenses दिया हुआ है, by whatever name called, relating to a particular process will be recorded in process first and second account, whatever it is. Mr. Hardik, as I said, कुछ भी expenses दिया है, whatever the expenses given, just record. कोई भी process में कोई भी expense दिया हुआ है, record it on the debit side. Anyone else with any doubts, queries, confusion? You guys can please post your queries. This chapter is very important from examination point of view. So now, I hope you guys have a rough idea about what all we'll be discussing in this chapter. So let's start with a practical question, a very basic practical question. Don't worry, Tambeshwari. No, Kasak, depreciation is not a normal loss. Give me some time. I'll be discussing normal loss, abnormal gains separately. Don't worry. By the end of this session, you guys will be thorough. What is normal loss? What is abnormal loss? Why we are recording it on the debit side, credit side, whatever it is. So don't worry, Tambeshwari. Don't worry, Kasak. Kasak, depreciation is a non-cash expense. It's not a normal loss. My dear Hardik, that's what I'm saying. Just थोड़ा सा पेशेंस रखिए. I'll be covering each and every point in detail. Don't worry, my dear. Ankit, give me some time, my dear. I'll be discussing normal loss, abnormal gains separately with the help of few examples. So don't worry, guys. I request you guys to please open your study material. I'll be discussing a question from study material only. So guys, let's start with example number 1 from the study material. Illustration number 1 from study material. The page number is page number 10.3. So from the following data, prepare process account indicating the cost of each process and the total cost. The total unit that passed through each process are 2.240 for the period. The details are given for process first, second, and third, wherein material, labor, other expenses are given. Indirect expenses are amounting to rupees 85,000, may be apportioned on the basis of direct wages. There is no opening and closing stock. So it's a very basic question. No information is given as regards normal loss, abnormal gain, anything. No information is given. Further, they are asking us to calculate the total cost of the process and the per unit cost of the process also. So the input is 240 units and the output is also 240 units. So now let's start with this question, illustration number 1. See, herein the input and output are same. See, input and the output of the final product is same. There is no normal loss, abnormal gain. So in short, we can skip the units column. See, units column का utility क्या है कि अगर कोई normal loss होता है, abnormal loss होता है, तो we can write it separately. but input is also 240 units, and my final products that are manufactured are also 240 units, so we can ignore the units column. But since the question is saying us to calculate the cost of each process and the per unit cost also of each process, so here instead of units column, we'll write per unit. That is, since the question is asking us to calculate the cost per unit of every process and the total cost, so per unit and amount, and per unit and the total amount. I have to discuss for everyone, Manvi. So let's start with this question. Wherein two material, 1,50,000. Labor, it is 80,000. Other expenses are 26,000. We have to calculate the per unit cost also. So 1,50,000 divided by 240. So this will be 625. 80,000 divided by 240, that is 333.33. This will be 108.33. Apart from this, there are indirect expenses also that are 85,000. And it is to be apportioned in the ratio of direct wages. It is to be apportioned in the ratio of direct wages, and the wages are given. So 8, 20, and 6. So this will be 20,000. This will be 50,000. This will be 15,000. So two indirect expenses, 20,000. So here in this question, no information is given as regards normal loss or abnormal loss. This is optional, Pranav, but yes, since the question is asking us to calculate the per unit cost of each process, that's why I'm writing this separately. So now the output of process first is transferred to next process. So by process second, this will be 2,76,000. So the total will be 1150. So this is how process first account is to be prepared. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your queries. Now thereafter this process, I'll prepare process second account. Now the output of process first will be transferred to the next process. So to process first. Now we'll write down the additional cost. Sir, ये ratio कहाँ से आया? See the labor cost is 80,000, 2 lakh and 60,000. So this is how this ratio is calculated. I have ignored all the zeros, 3 zeros, that's why. So this is how I got this ratio. And how come 20,000 is calculated? 85,000 into 8 divided by 8 plus 20 plus 6. So this is 34. So this is how 20,000 and accordingly 50,000 and 15,000 are calculated. I hope your query is resolved, Bhavna and Suvendu. Yes, Bhavna and Suvendu. Okay, Suvendu sir, how to calculate per unit? See, the inputs are 240 units. So I'm dividing each and every cost by 240 unit to calculate the per unit amount. So 1,50,000 divided by 240, this is how I got 625. Now next. Yes, Hardik. The cost divided by number of units. Now let's start with the next process. So to material, to labor, to other expenses, and to indirect expenses. So 50,000, 2,72,000. 50,000, 2,72,000, and this one 50,000. Everything divided by 240. So this will be 208.33. This will be 300. The output of this process is transferred to next process. So this will be 6,48,000. So this is how process second account is to be prepared. And now we'll prepare process third account. Again, the output of process second is transferred to the next process, that is process third. So we'll write to process second 2,700 and 6,48,000. Now we'll write the additional cost, that is material, labor, other expenses, and indirect expenses. And it is given 20,000, 60,000, 25,000. So 20,000, 60,000, 25,000, and 15,000. Everything divided by 240. So this will be 83.33. This will be 250. This will be 104.167. This will be 62.5. Now the output of, since it is the final process, so the output of process third is transferred to finished stock account. We'll write down the total. So this will be 7,68,000. So this is how the basic process account is to be prepared. These types of questions generally examiner don't ask because it's a very easy question. This question I have discussed just to give you a rough idea about how the process account or the basic process account is prepared. If you guys have any doubts or queries, you guys can please post your queries. So, Mr. Srinivasan, the thing is that here in the input and the final product, the number of units of inputs and the number of units of final product are same. There are no normal loss, no abnormal loss. So that's why I have ignored the column of number of units. Further, The question is asking us to calculate the per unit cost of the process and the total cost of the process. So that's why I have prepared this column separately, that is the per unit. So in this question, no information is given as regards normal loss, and abnormal gain. Now, let's start with these 3 points, that what is normal loss, what is abnormal loss, and what is abnormal gain. So let's proceed further. Now let's start with normal loss. Now see, there are 2 parts. What is the meaning of normal loss and what is the treatment of normal loss? When talking about the meaning of normal loss, what is normal loss? See, due to the nature of product or production process, this normal loss is bound to happen. We can't avoid. So it is inherent in nature. Due to the nature of product or production process, the loss that is bound to happen is normal loss. Due to the nature of product or production process, the loss that is bound to happen is normal loss. Bound to happen means what? Is not. Bound to happen means what? It is unavoidable. हम चाह के भी इस लॉस को अवॉइड नहीं कर सकते. Even if we want also, we can't avoid this normal loss. Let me discuss this with the help of an example. Let's say I'm the manufacturer of potato chips from potatoes. Yes, Hardik, 100% it will. So let's say I'm the manufacturer of potato chips from potatoes. As I said that I procure these potatoes directly from farm. अब farm से मेरे factory तक आएगा तो see guys, do make a note of it that होगा क्या? There will be a loading and unloading twice or thrice. And since the potatoes are of perishable nature, so during the course of loading and unloading, कुछ percent potatoes damage होंगे, spoil होंगे. We can't avoid it. So that is what we call as normal loss. I repeat again, I'm the manufacturer of potato chips from potatoes. I procure these potatoes directly from farm. Now, farm से factory gate तक आएगा तो 2 बार loading होगा और unloading होगा. Now, very important guys, during the course of loading and unloading, there are 100% chances कि कुछ potatoes damage or spoil होंगे. So the potatoes that are damaged or spoiled is what we call as normal loss. Another example, let's say I'm the manufacturer of wooden furniture from wood. Now, while converting the wood to my wooden furniture, कुछ परसेंट wood जो है वो खराब होता ही है. We can't avoid it. That is normal. Another example, let's say I'm into business of processing of crude oil. मैं crude oil को process करता हूँ and I convert it into petrol, gasoline, diesel, natural gas. Now, during this process, certain percentage of crude oil is evaporated. I can't avoid. That is what we call as normal loss. Another example, let's say I'm the manufacturer of shirt. Now, during the course of stitching the shirt, certain percentage of the fabric is, certain percent of, there is a wastage of certain percentage of fabric. This wastage I can't avoid. It is what we call as normal. So, due to the nature of product or production process, certain percentage of product is damaged or spoiled. So, the damaged or spoiled product is what we call as normal loss. So, due to the nature of product or production process, the loss that is bound to happen is normal loss. When talking about bound to happen, what we call it as, it is unavoidable. Second, since we are doing business from long, so the management have a rough idea कि इतना percent जो है खराब होगा या इतना percent जो है damage होगा because of the past experience and the data we have. So this normal loss can be predicted well in advance. So can be predicted in advance by management. So I hope you guys are thorough with it, that what is normal loss. Example, I'll write the examples also for your reference. Evaporation of certain percentage of crude oil while processing into petrol, diesel, etc. I hope this part is clear that what is normal loss. ये loss हम लोग avoid कर ही नहीं सकते. It is unavoidable. Now the point is, what is the treatment of this normal loss? How to deal with normal loss? So when talking about the treatment of normal loss, very simple. The value of the treatment of normal loss, the value of normal loss will be absorbed by the balance units or good units. The value of normal loss will be absorbed by good units. In short, सीधी और आसान भाषा में, the product cost will be inflated because of normal loss. Normal loss की वजह से product cost हमारा inflate हो जाएगा. Any scrap value realized on sale of normal loss, any scrap value realized on sale of normal loss will be deducted from process cost. Any scrap value realized on sale of normal loss, will be deducted from the process cost to calculate the cost of final output of the process. If you guys have any doubts, you guys can please post your query. Yes, Nitin, Srinivasan, Tambeshwari, Hardik, Suvendu. Any doubts, guys? Hardik, Bhavna, Pranav, Preeti, Manvi, Kasak. Anyone having any doubts? Ankit Mishra, Sahu. I request you guys to please copy this explanation. Don't worry, give me some time. I'll be explaining this part with the help of an example, Tambeshwari. Suvendu Ghosh, very simple. While processing crude oil to convert it into petrol, diesel, gasoline, natural gas, certain percentage of crude oil is evaporated. So that percentage is normal loss. सीधी और आसान भाषा में आप चाय बना रहे हो. During the course of preparing tea, certain percentage of water is evaporated. So that is what we call as normal loss. Another example, let's say I'm the manufacturer of potato chips from potatoes, and during the course of loading, unloading, and transportation, कुछ potatoes damage होते ही हैं. I can't avoid it. That is normal loss. So let me discuss. I hope you guys have noted everything. Now, see, let me discuss that what will be the treatment of normal loss. Let's say, let's say my process cost is 1,80,000. Let's say after adding material, labor, all the direct expenses, indirect expenses, I have got the total process cost that is 1,80,000. And my inputs were 10,000 units. My inputs were 10,000 units. So what will be my cost per unit? In the first case, when there is no normal loss. When there is no normal loss, my cost per unit will be how much? My cost per unit will be total units. Total process cost is 1,80,000. My input is 10,000. And let's say in the first case, my output is also 10,000 units. So what will be the cost per unit? Very simple. 10,000 units will divide and the cost per unit will be rupees 8 per unit. So if there is no normal loss, कोई भी normal loss नहीं है, तो very simple, the total process cost divided by my units, that is output. My output is also of 10,000 units. So 18 rupees per unit will be the cost per unit. Now let's say, take the second case. It's given normal loss is given at the rate 10% of inputs. Let's take one more situation wherein normal loss is given at the rate of 10% of input. Now, therefore, what we will be doing is, my inputs are how much? 10,000 units. Now, there is a normal loss, certain percentage, let's say, evaporated, damaged, spoiled, whatever it is, or there is a breakage, whatever it is. So, there is a normal loss of 10% of input. So, it will be 1,000 units. So, my output will be how much? 9,000 units. My output will be how much? 9,000 units. Now, again, now here in my cost per unit will be what? 1,80,000 divided by 9,000. That is rupees 20 per unit. So herein what we can see is that ये जो 1,000 units का cost है, the cost of these 1,000 units is absorbed by remaining 9,000 units. See, due to this loss of 1,000 units, the product cost is inflated by 2 rupees. So this is what we call as that the value of normal loss is absorbed by good units. वो cost जो 10,000 units absorb करने वाले थे, now only 9,000 units are absorbing, and accordingly the product cost is inflated because of this. If you guys have any doubts, you guys can please post. So earlier, this cost of 1,80,000 was absorbed by how many units? Only 10,000 units. So the cost per unit was 18. But now, this cost of 1,80,000 is absorbed by 9,000 units. ये जो 1,000 units का cost था, वो किसको bear करना पड़ा? Remaining 9,000 units को. So accordingly, the product cost is inflated. So that's why we can say, we say now that the value of normal loss will be absorbed by good units. Let's take one more situation wherein same as 0.2, further scrap value realized on sale of normal loss is 4.5 per unit. Same as 0.2 means there is a normal loss of 10% of input, and further the scrap value realized on sale of normal loss is how much? 4.5 per unit. So now, my process cost is 1,80,000. My process cost is how much? 1,80,000. There is a normal loss of 1,000 units, and I'm getting an output of how much? 9,000 units. I'm getting an output of 9,000 units. Now see, when talking about the units, there is a loss of 1,000. But when we are selling these 1,000 units in the market, we are getting something in return. So जब units minus हो रहे हैं तो उसके ऊपर जो पैसा recur हुआ है, that's also we should subtract it from the total cost. See, from 1,80,000 is my process cost, but yes, there is an income of 4,500 on sell of these 1,000 units. So that's why this will be deducted, and my final cost per unit will be how much? 19.5. Because of these 4,500 units, जो cost 20 था अब कितना हो गया 19.5. Because herein we are incurring the cost of 1,80,000, but yes, certain percentage are damaged and sold in the market, and we are getting 4,500 in return. So that amount that is realized will be deducted while calculating the cost of good units or cost per unit. So in short, I hope you guys understand the logic that how come the value of normal loss is absorbed by good units, why we are deducting the scrap value. In short, there is a formula that is given in the question, cost of good units, but no need to memorize the formula. I'm just writing it for your reference. Process cost minus scrap value realized on sale of normal loss divided by inputs minus normal. So this is how the cost of good units is calculated. If you guys have any doubts or queries, then you guys can please post. Tambeshwari, hopefully your query is resolved. See, I repeat again, there is a normal loss of 10% of input. So the units are already deducted. Now, earlier we were getting nothing, but now we are recovering 4.5 per unit for every unit of normal loss. So see, my net cost will be how much? 1,75,500. 1,80,000 खर्च हो रहा है तो वापस 4,500 मिल भी तो रहा है, because we are subtracting these 1,000 units. So we are assuming these 1,000 units as loss, but वो loss के unit से भी कुछ amount recover हुआ है. So that will be deducted from the process cost. Tambeshwari, hopefully now it is resolved. Anyone else having any doubts? So because of this, see, in short, what I want to say is that the cost of these 1,000 units are absorbed by remaining 9,000 units. That is what the logic of normal loss is. Komal, you are a bit late. Anyways, I've just received your query. So giving you 2 minutes time to copy. Yes, the cost of product will be inflated because of normal loss. In short, the cost that was supposed to be absorbed by 10,000 units will now be absorbed by 9,000 units. So the proportionate cost of 1,000 units will be absorbed by remaining 9,000 units. Yes, Kasak, at every stage of, in every process, the percentage of normal loss may differ. In process 1, it can be 5%. In process 2, it can be 10%. In process 3, it can be 8%. Anything. So you have to follow the instructions that are given in the question. So giving you 2 to 3 minutes time to copy, giving you whatever the queries you have, whatever that is running in your mind. Tambeshwari, hopefully you are thorough with the concepts. So whatever running in your mind by whatever name called, just post your query. I'll try my best to address your queries. Input will always be given Manvi. Don't worry. The information will always be given in the question that how much are my inputs, how much is the normal loss, how much is my output, whatever it is. So giving you I'll update you in the next session, Hardik. Dipali, in short, the amount realized on sale of normal loss will be deducted from the process cost. So now let's discuss a very basic question. I request you guys to please take the screenshot of this question. It's a very basic question, so I request you guys to please take the screenshot. So example number 2, normal loss, wherein there is an input of 1000 units at the rate rupees 100. So the total cost is 1 lakh. The labor cost is 1,50,000. Other expenses are 50,000. Scrap value realized is 12,000 and the normal loss is 10% of input. You are required to prepare the process account and calculate the cost of good units transferred. I request you guys to please take the screenshot. So let's start with this example. So we are preparing process account. Number of units and amount. Number of units and amount. So two material, 1000 units at the rate rupees 1 lakh. Labor cost is 1,50,000. Other expenses are 50,000. That's it. Now by normal loss, it is given it is 10% of inputs. The normal loss is 10% of input. So there is a loss of 100 units. And it is given that the scrap value realized is 12,000. The scrap value realized is 12,000. That's it. So by process second, how many units? 900 units were transferred. Sorry. Now my process cost is My process cost is 3 lakh. That is 1 lakh plus 150 plus 50. minus the amount realized on sale of normal loss is 12,000 divided by my good units, that is 1,000 minus 100. So the cost per unit will be 320 per unit. So very simple, the process cost minus amount realized on sale of scrap divided by my good units. Or we can say estimated production. That is 1,000 minus 100, that is 900. So we have got 320 per unit. So this will be 2,88,000. When talking about how to prepare normal loss account, very simple, guys. Units, amount, units, and amount. To process first, 100 units were sold at 12,000. So this much is my normal loss and they are sold in the market. So by bank, 100 units were sold and the amount realized is 12,000. So this is how we have to deal with normal loss when the normal loss is given in the question. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your query. I request you guys to copy the solution because it's not there in the study material and it's a part of concept only rather than a complete full-fledged question. I'm done with explaining normal loss. If you have any queries, you guys can please post your queries. Yes, Mr. Sahu, Ankit Mishra, Komal Prajapati. Any doubts, guys? Yes, Hardik. If no scrap value is given in the question, then this will be nil. That's it. If the scrap value is not given in the question, the value will be 0. But yes, the scrap value is given, so that's why I have written 12,000. Yes, Hardik, again it will be nil only. This is not the cost of normal loss. This is the value of normal loss. This is not the cost of normal loss. I repeat again, this is the scrap value of the normal loss, my dear. Yes, 1 second. So if scrap value is given in percentage, then it will be on total. See, scrap value cannot be given, will not be given in percentage form. The normal loss in units will be given in percentage form, and the scrap value will be given either per unit or in aggregate. Bhavna, because the point is, see, this much is my normal loss of 100 units, and they are sold in the market at 12,000, and we are getting 12,000 in hand. That's why I'm writing 12,000 here by bank. Since this much is realized on sale of 100 units, that's why. Anyone else with any doubts? Tambeshwari, any doubts? Those who want to copy this explanation can please copy. See, Bhavna, sir, if 100 units are sold in the market, why it is called as loss? See, these 100 units, ये जो 100 units है इसका वैल्यू बहुत ज्यादा है. See, the cost per unit is how much? The cost per unit is 320, and these goods are sold at only 120. That is much below our market value, because these are the damaged goods or spoiled goods, or it's just like a wastage to us. So that's why the value is less. See, 12,000. So these are sold at the rate 120. It means what? That 320 rupees का product जो है हमने 120 rupees में बेचा. It means there is a, see, so these units are actually scrapped. These are not the good units. These are the damaged units or bad units or scrapped units. And we are getting a very nominal amount. That's why we call it as normal loss. नहीं तो 320 की cost का unit कौन 120 में sell करेगा? So that's why these 100 units is what a loss to us, because they are not good units. They are defective products. So that's why we are selling them in the market and at much below the cost, in fact. I hope your query is resolved, Bhavna. So done with normal loss. Now we'll be starting with abnormal loss and abnormal gain, and thereafter we'll discuss a full-fledged question wherein normal loss is also there, abnormal loss is also there, and abnormal gain is also there. So I'll be covering all these parts in this session. So before this, let's take a break of 15 minutes, and I'll be back after 15 minutes with the remaining part. Okay, 1 second. So there is a loss of 20,000. Now this loss of 20,000 is absorbed by remaining 900 units. So that's why my product cost is inflated. Very good question. So this loss of 20,000 is absorbed by remaining 900 units. That's what it is. And that's why the cost is inflated actually. See, if there is no normal loss, agar koi bhi normal loss nahi hota, so my cost is 3 lakh, my units are 1,000. So therefore my cost is 300. So ये 300 से 320 क्यों हुआ? Because of this loss of 20,000. So let's take a break of 15 minutes. I'll be back after 15 minutes with abnormal loss and abnormal gain. Admin sir. Welcome back, guys. So I hope you guys are thorough with what I have discussed till now. Let me give you a quick brief about what I have discussed till now. We have started with this chapter, process costing. This method of costing is used by the companies wherein the raw material has to pass through various processes before being converted into final product. Since each process is unique and separate, so separate process account is to be prepared for every process to record the cost pertaining to that process. Thereafter, we discuss the very basic, a basic account on process cost. How to prepare very basic process cost account. Thereafter, we discuss the concept of normal loss. Now, let's proceed further with the next part, that is abnormal loss. So, when talking about abnormal loss, what is abnormal loss? The loss in excess of normal loss. अगर normal loss से कुछ ज्यादा loss हो जाता है, this is what we call as abnormal loss. The loss in excess of predetermined loss is what we call as abnormal loss. So when talking about the meaning of abnormal loss, the loss in excess of predetermined loss is abnormal. When talking about predetermined loss, when talking about what is the meaning of predetermined loss, this is what we are talking about, normal loss. So the loss in excess of predetermined loss is what we call as abnormal loss. Predetermined loss means what? Normal loss. So normal loss से अगर कुछ ज्यादा extra loss हो जाता है, this is what we call as abnormal loss. Now it can be avoided. अगर हम चाहें तो इसे avoid कर सकते हैं. So can be avoided if it cannot be predicted in advance. It occurs due to bad plant design or carelessness of workers or abnormal reasons. So what is abnormal loss? Loss in excess of normal loss is abnormal loss. Can be avoided if suitable measures are taken. Cannot be predicted in advance. It occurs due to bad plant design, carelessness of workers, and abnormal reasons. Now, let me discuss few examples of abnormal loss. As I said that I am the manufacturer of potato chips from potatoes. Now, if there is any loss due to loading and unloading, we have already categorized in normal loss. Because this loss cannot be avoided. वो product का nature ही ऐसा है कि हम लोग avoid नहीं कर सकते. Now, let's take a situation. As I said that I procure these potatoes directly from farmers and from the farm to my factory gate, they are transported. Now, let's say during transit, one of my vehicle made accident. And let's say 35 tons of potatoes were damaged or spoiled, or it was a complete waste of 35 tons of potatoes. So due to this accident, my 35 tons of potatoes was a complete waste. So this 35 tons of potato is what my abnormal loss, because it was due to abnormal reasons. That is, one of my vehicle met accident, and that is the reason there is a loss of 35 tons of potatoes. So we can say if it is due to accident or loss by fire, or if it is due to carelessness of worker. Now the point is, accident कोई भी predict नहीं कर सकता. Further, if the driver would have taken care of, if he would have driven in a proper way, this can be avoided. So I hope you guys are thorough with that. What is the difference between normal loss and abnormal loss? Abnormal loss occurs due to abnormal reason. It can be avoided if suitable measures are taken. Further, it cannot be predicted. कोई भी normal abnormal loss predict कर ही नहीं सकता. Further, it occurs due to bad plant design, carelessness of workers, or abnormal reasons. When talking about the treatment of abnormal loss, the value of abnormal loss will be equal to value of good units. It is shown in credit side of PN. It is shown in credit side of process account, and thereafter transferred to costing. So value of abnormal loss will be equal to value of good units. It is shown in credit side of process account and thereafter transferred to costing P&L. Now, practical part, I'll be discussing it separately. So this is all what about the basic concept of abnormal loss. If you guys have any doubts, you guys can please post your queries. I request you guys to copy this explanation. It is shown in credit side of process account and thereafter transferred to costing P&L. Let's discuss this with the help of an example. Let's say my inputs are 10,000 units. My process cost is, let's say, 1,80,000 rupees. My process cost is 1,80,000 rupees. Further, the management has clearly predicted this normal loss in advance, that is at the rate of 10% on inputs. Further, the scrap value realized at the rate of 4.5 per unit. Further, my actual output is 8,600 units. This is the question given. Now see, my input is 10,000 units. My normal loss is 10% of input, that is 1,000 units. So my expected output is how much? 9,000 units. This is what my expected output is, that is 9,000 units. However, my actual output is 8,600 units only. I was expecting an output of 9,000 units. However, my actual output is only 8,600 units. It means, what about these 400 units? These 400 units is what? My abnormal. These 400 units is what? My abnormal loss. I was expecting an output of 9,000 units. मुझे expectation था कि मेरा output आएगा 9,000 units. However, my actual output was only 8,600 units. So here, this loss of 400 units is what? My abnormal loss. Now, the product cost will not be inflated because of these 400 units. Abnormal loss जो है हर साल नहीं होता. I repeat again, abnormal loss हमेशा नहीं होता है. It occurs due to carelessness of workers or maybe due to bad plant design or whatever it is. So abnormal loss से product cost inflate नहीं होगा. See, we can inflate the product cost because of normal loss. But yes, if abnormal loss is there, then the product cost will not be inflated. The value of abnormal loss will be equal to the value of good units. Now, very simple, guys. How much is my process cost? 1,80,000. We are realizing a scrap value of 4.5 per unit on sale of 1,000 units. So 4,500. This is what? Scrap value on sale of normal loss divided by my 10,000 units minus 1,000 units. That is what my expected output. Very important, we will not subtract the 400 units, that is abnormal loss. अगर इसको subtract कर देंगे तो product cost और ज़्यादा inflate हो जाएगा because of abnormal loss. Do make a note of it that the product cost will not be inflated because of abnormal loss. The value of abnormal loss will be equal to the value of good units. So my cost per unit will be how much? $9.5 per unit. Now, when talking about the value of output, it will be how many units are transferred to the next process? 8,600 units. So 8,600 units into 19.5. And value of abnormal loss, 400 units is the abnormal loss into 19.5. 167,700. This is the value of output transfer to the next process. And $7,800. This will be the value of abnormal loss, and it will be transferred to costing. If you guys have any doubts, then you guys can please post. Again, I'm focusing on each and every concept in detail, that while solving the question, you guys should be able to solve the question very easily. So if you're thorough with the concept, you can solve any problem at ease. So I hope this part is clear to all. If you guys have any doubts, you guys can please post your queries. Waiting for your queries, guys. Any doubts? Akshara, Anjali, Apurva, Arshdeep, Aisha, Sai Kiran, Jayalakshmi, Karan Kumar, Kasak, Praveen, Preeti, Santosh, Yashneen, Tambeshwari. Any doubts? I hope this part is clear to you, Tambeshwari. Again, there are no formulas in costing. It's all what about concept. At the start of the session, someone told me that, sir, abnormal loss or abnormal gain is balancing figure. It is not balancing figure here. Very simple. 10,000 minus 1,000 is my normal loss. So 9,000 is what? My expected output. Now, out of this 9,000 expected output, my actual output is 8,600. It means 400 units is what? My abnormal loss. I'll be discussing this part also. Don't worry, Manvi. So I request you guys to please open your study material. I'm discussing example number 3 from the study material. I'm discussing example number 3 from the study material, guys. The page number is page number 10.8. Example number 3 of the study material. I request you guys to copy this explanation also. So now let's start with example number 3 of the study material. Note here, the selling price will also not be affected. आप एक बात बताइए, क्या abnormal loss की वजह से हर बार कंपनी अपना selling price change करेगी क्या? No. Abnormal loss neither impacts the selling price, not impacts the cost of the product. Yes, the money differ because of abnormal loss. So example number 3, a product passes through process first and process second. Material issued to process amounts to rupees 40,000. Wages are 30,000 and manufacturing overheads were 27,000. Normal loss anticipated was 5% of inputs, and further 4,550 units of output were produced and transferred out from process first. So herein the inputs, let's check the inputs. There was no opening stock. Input raw material issued to process 1 is 5,000 unit. Scrap has a realizable value of rupees 2 per unit. You are required to prepare process first account, normal loss account, abnormal loss account, and the units transferred to process second. So let's start now. Here in the inputs is given, the normal loss is given, and the actual output is given. So let's start with this question. See, material is 5,000 units. And the value is 40,000. The wages are 30,000. Overheads are 27,000. Normal loss is 5% of inputs. So my inputs are 5,000. So 5,000 into 5%, that is 250. Now the scrap value realized is rupees 2 per unit. So 250 into 2, 500. Now see, 5,000 was my input. My normal loss was 250. So my expected output was 4750. This was my expected output. But my actual output is how much? My actual output is 4550. My actual output is how much? 4550. It means there is a loss of additional 200 units. So this 200 units is what? My abnormal. So by abnormal loss, 200 units, and we could transfer only 4550 units to the next process. So by process second, 4550. Now, ultimately, we have to calculate the value of these two. And what will be the value? Ultimately, the value will be what? 40 plus 30, how much? 4. 97,000 minus 500. That is 96,500. How come 96,500? 97,000 minus 500. That is 96,500 जो है हम लोगों को क्या करना है इन दोनों को डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना है. Ultimately, we have to distribute this 96,500 among these two. So very simple, guys. When talking about the calculation of cost per unit, 97,000, that is my process cost, minus scrap value realized, that is 500, divided by my expected output. Guys, do make a note of it. Actual output से आप divide नहीं करेंगे. You have to use expected output only. And what is expected output? Input minus normal loss. So 5,000 is my input and 250 is my normal loss. So this is how we'll get the cost per unit. So the value will be 20.375. Sorry, 315. So now 20.316 into 200, 4063 will be the value of abnormal loss. And the balance amount, 92,437. So this is how we have to give the effect of abnormal loss in process account. Do make a note of it. The product cost will not be inflated because of abnormal loss. Further, very important, guys, when talking about the preparation of abnormal loss account, to process first 200 units and 4063 is the value. Now, very important, see the normal loss units, that is these 250 units are sold in the market at the rate 2. So just like normal loss, these 200 units will also be sold in the market at the rate 2. This is what we have to assume. What we have to assume, that by bank, 200 units, these units are also sold in the market at the rate 2, so 400. We will assume that abnormal loss units are also sold in the market, just like normal loss. So on 200 units, we have realized 400. But the actual value of these 200 units is 4063. So the balance amount will be transferred to costing P&L. 3663. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your query. Those who want to copy the solution can please copy. I've written that we will assume that abnormal units are also sold in the market just like normal loss. So 200 units are sold at the rate rupees 2 per unit, because the scrap value realized on sale of normal loss is also rupees 2 per unit. These are abnormal losses, Amit. Yes, Rishita, you have to follow the same assumption in every question. Whatever the scrap value is, we'll multiply it with by abnormal loss units. The balance amount will be transferred to costing P&L. These things you have to follow in every question. So Manvi, very simple, my dear. Two process first. Now we will assume that just like these units, these 250 units are sold in the market, these 200 units are also sold in the market. So even though the cost is 4063, we are realizing only 400. So the balance amount will be treated as loss and that will be only transferred to costing P&L. Hardik, just give me some time. I'm coming on abnormal gain also. Don't worry. Anyone else having any doubts? It's not a part of total sales. It's just a reduction from the cost. It's just, we call it as saving in the cost. Sanya. Now let's start with the next part, that is abnormal gain. See, just like normal loss, we will assume that these units are also scrapped in the market, Kasat. Now, when talking about abnormal gain, see, when the actual production exceeds the expected production, this is what we call as abnormal gain. So when talking about abnormal gain, what is abnormal gain? When actual production exceeds the expected production, it is when talking about expected production, I have already discussed what is expected production. That is inputs minus normal loss. So when the actual production exceeds the expected production, we call it as abnormal gain. Or we can alternatively say that it is a saving in normal loss. एक तरह से जो हमारा नॉर्मल लॉस है वो कम हुआ. This is what we call as abnormal gain. Now, it arises due to overestimation of normal loss. We should give some credit to our workers also. So it also arises due to increase in efficiency of workers. Or improvement in production process. So when the actual production exceeds the expected production, it is abnormal gain. Further, when talking about the treatment, again, just like abnormal loss, product cost कम या ज़्यादा नहीं होगा because of abnormal gain. So the product cost will not be reduced because of abnormal gain. So in short, the value of abnormal gain will be equal to value of good units. Value of abnormal gain will be equal to value of good units. Further, it is shown in debit side of process account and thereafter transfer to costing. प्रोडक्ट कॉस्ट के ऊपर कुछ भी इंपैक्ट नहीं आएगा. इट इज टू बी शोन इन डेबिट साइड ऑफ प्रोसेस अकाउंट एंड देयरआफ्टर ट्रांसफर टू कॉस्टिंग P&L. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your query. So let's discuss one question on abnormal gain. Sanya, let me cover. Riddhi, just give me some time. Yes, it goes to costing P&L, Riddhi. So let's start with example number 4 of the study material. The page number is 10.9. I request you guys to please open your study material page number 10.9. So a product passes through process first and process second. Material issued to process first is 40,000. It's the same question as what we discussed in abnormal loss. Wages are 30,000. Manufacturing overhead are 27,000. Normal loss is 5%. However, there is a change in output. The output is 4850 now. So there is no opening stock. Inputs are 5,000 units and the scrap value is 2 rupees per unit. You are required to prepare normal loss, abnormal loss, normal loss, abnormal gain account and process account. So let's start with this question. Now this process account will be prepared in the similar way. Process account. Units and amount. To material, 5,000 units, and the value is 40,000. Wages are 30,000. And manufacturing overheads are 27,000. The normal loss is 5% of inputs. So that is 250. Scrap value realized is rupees 2. So this will be 500. Now by process second, the output is given, that is 4850 units. So in the similar way, my inputs are 5,000. 250 is my normal loss. 4750 is my output, expected output. Now my actual output is 4850. That is much more than my expected output. So 100 units is what? My abnormal gain. So we have to balance this account. So 2 ultimately, again, we have to distribute this 97,000 minus 500 among these two. So when talking about the calculation of cost per unit, it will be same. That is 97,000 minus 500 divided by my expected output, that is 5,000 minus 250. I'm following the same approach in every question. So this will be 20.315. The cost per unit will remain unchanged, 316. Now we multiply it by 4850. So this will be 98,532. This will be 2032. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your query. Now the most important part, how to prepare abnormal gain account. As I said, what is abnormal gain? The saving in normal loss. What is abnormal gain? एक तरह का ये क्या है? Saving है normal loss का. See, I was expecting a normal loss of 250. I was expecting a normal loss of 250, but actual loss हुआ ही कितना? 250 minus 100. Only 150 units was the loss. I was expecting a normal loss of 250 units, but my actual units that are scrapped in the market is only 150 units. So, very simple, guys. If you prepare normal loss account, $50 and $500. Very important, guys. See, 250 units is what my normal loss. But when talking about the actual units that are sold in the market, it is only 150 units. By abnormal gain, 100 units. These 100 units are not sold in the market. Only the units that are sold in the market is 150 units into 2, 300. Balance 200 will be adjusted against abnormal gain. I repeat again, guys, what is abnormal gain? We can say it is saving in normal loss. So even though the abnormal loss, the saving in normal loss, even though my normal loss is 250 units, but when talking about the actual units that are sold in the market, it is only 150 units at the rate rupees 2 per unit. So this amount is what my balancing figure we can say. Now we'll prepare abnormal gain account. So to process account, by process. $100 and 2032. When talking about these 100, some amount is adjusted in normal loss. Only balance amount will be transferred to costing P&L. This is how the abnormal gain account is to be prepared. This account is not given in the study material, so I request you guys to please copy this part. Yes, if abnormal loss is there, then we have to prepare abnormal loss also. This part is bit on the trickier side. If you have any doubts, you guys can please post, guys. Vishmita, we have to assume that these units are sold in the market. The total amount will not go to costing P&L since the normal loss units are sold in the market. So why not abnormal loss units? Yes, so Tambeshwari, Sanya, Hardik, Rishita, Manvi, Karan, Santosh, Akshara, Mr. Nagaraj, any doubts? Nitin, Komal, Dipali, Bhavna, any doubts, guys? Dipali, Vishmita, Amit Viswas, Apurva Das, Ankit Mishra. Anyone having any doubts? You guys can please post your queries. The point is, why I'm discussing each and every point in detail. The major point is that अब मुझे ज़्यादा question discuss करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. I have to just discuss the summary question wherein there is normal loss also, abnormal loss also, abnormal gain. Once you are thorough with the concept, you can solve n number of questions. Now, when we will discuss a full-fledged question, you will see like, okay, it's very easy for us now. So the point is, I have just divided the chapter in various parts, that how to deal with normal loss, how to deal with abnormal loss, and how to deal with abnormal gain. So once you are thorough with these points, you can solve any question at ease. So still, if you have any doubts, then you guys can. No need to show it as note, Kasak. Yes, Apurva, it is very easy, my dear. Amit Vishwas, when talking about normal loss, it is two process first, 250 and 500. Now, assuming only 150, we have to take it because see, abnormal gain is what? It's a saving in normal loss. So only 150 units are sold in the market. Remaining 100 units we have to adjust against abnormal gain. So by abnormal gain 100 and 200, by bank 150 and 300. Now abnormal gain account, the same figures are transferred from process first, that is 100 and 2032. Now this amount will be adjusted against normal loss, and balance amount 1832 will go to costing P&L. It's a loss, my dear. It's an abnormal loss or abnormal gain, and abnormal loss, abnormal gain always go to P&L, my dear. If no realizable value is given, we will assume it's zero. Okay, why bank account? Because since we are selling these products in the market and we are getting something in return, so that's why we can write cash or bank. Anyone else? Riddhi, I hope your query is resolved. So guys, we are done with the basic concepts of process costing. In the next session, we'll be discussing one full-fledged question, and thereafter we'll start with some advanced problem, that is valuation of work in progress. What if in case inter-process profit is involved? So I'll be discussing all these points in depth. So don't worry. By the end of this chapter, you guys will be thorough with the concepts on process costing, and I assure you, you will be able to solve any questions, all the questions of study material, past examination questions, and MTP questions. So don't worry, I'll be discussing everything in detail. So sufficient sessions are there for process costing. So thank you. So one second. It's very easy, my dear. 4850 into 20.316. And this is 20.316 into 100. So thank you so much for your time and patience and for active participation. See you soon with the remaining part of the chapter. Take care, guys. God bless you. Enjoy your day. Yes, sir.